Now, as the topic of the webinar, incremental value-focused optimization for your configuration management database, we are going to cover the following topics. First, for those who are not familiar with CMDB or terms like CI, I will do a very quick introduction. Following that, we will look at how does CMDB really help to effectively manage IT services, and what is its relationship to the overall IT service management. We look at the impact. What is the impact of not managing CMDBs, and how is it related to the overall service quality? Why companies find it hard? Over the last 7-8 years that I have worked across numerous organizations of varying sizes, from an organization with a little over 100 servers in the data center to an organization where we had over 12,000 servers. At all levels, why is it hard to build and manage CMDBs? So we are going to look at briefly those challenges. Then we look at improvement and what strategies you can adopt to improve your CMDBs while managing the risks that we have seen in the past through our experiences. And then we look at, how would you make sure once you have CMDB in place, how it continues to be valuable. Please, as Susan mentioned, note down your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll get to those questions afterwards. So some assumptions. One of the assumptions I'm going to make here is that we are all familiar with the basic concepts of IT service management, and we have somehow experienced in our firms, in our companies, in one way or the other, how CMDB operates. Whether you have been part of a development team, or you have been managing, or you are part of the change management team. So, you have some experience. I think that'll help you better appreciate the overall discussion today. With that, CMDB really, it stands for, as the title says, Configuration Management Database. And what it really is, it aims to provide the logical picture of IT infrastructure. We are going to get into detail of what this picture may look like, but what is important here is that this picture does not and should not capture everything. It captures those components, the relationship between the components that actually matter. Now the question is, what actually matters? And we will soon get into this discussion on how to identify things that really matter and things that you really want to control. And CIs may include processes, hardware, software, applications, documents, and others. So we are going to go into details on what different types of CIs can you have. CMDB and ITSM. So before we get into CMDB, I'll quickly spend a little time about understanding what a service is. So according to ITIL v3, services are a means of delivering value to our customers by facilitating the outcomes customers want to achieve without the ownership of specific costs and risks. What that really means is that imagine most of us use Blackberries, most of you use cell phone service, most of us use internet service. At what time do you actually consider the service that you're using as a valuable service? Obviously, if you're paying for it and you're happy with the service, then it's valuable. If you're not happy, you will not pay for it. And when you pay for it, you assume that the service provider is going to assume all the specific costs and risks. So you don't care when you're paying for your cell phone service or for any service how your service provider is going to use your financial resources or how they're going to manage risks. What you care about is you get the value for the money that you pay. And that's the ITIL V3 definition. It's important because we will talk about services throughout the presentation. And services are really of two types. So business services and technical services. Now, business services are normally those services that your customers can understand. And it will really depend upon who your customer really is. So it's not just, if you're providing services, for example, you're a cell phone company and your customers are end users, then they are your customers. And the services that you see on your service provider's website as an end customer are the business services. Now, the technical services are those that make up business services, and they are normally underlying services. Now, if some of you are, it's overwhelming, we will get into the details of how these two services fall into the larger picture. But for now, it is important to understand that business services are those that are visible and understandable to your end customer. For example, if you're providing data center services, in which might be providing application hosting or other infrastructure services, then your customers are going to be application developers most of the time, application management team. So here it goes. It really depends on what your business is, what your company does, and who your customers are. With that, what is the logical picture of IT? So if we think about business process, and business process, is managed, owned by the business. So for example, in case of eBay, their business process can be online searching, product selection, checkout, and so on and so forth. In case of a manufacturing organization, one of the business processes can be supply chain management. So that's the level that we're talking about. These business processes are the processes that are executed by our customers, whether we are internal IT or we are providing outside external service provider. The business processes are those processes that are executed by our businesses, and we enable them. That is, IT enables those processes. And underneath you see that there is one example. It's maybe a business process that is enabled by business service A and business service B. And the business service A and B are visible in our business service view of the catalog. If you move down, each business service can be realized by multiple technical services. Now, at this level, you have technical services that are normally and usually shared across business services. An example is if you have Active Directory or you have FTP. These are at a technical level, and normally they are shared to support multiple business services. And that's where the whole discussion around service-oriented architecture and all that comes in, but we're not going to go into details on that end. And then those are really implemented by different components, which include software, application, hardware, and data, and probably others. So if this is a service tree, then this is an example of a real-world service.